Every year, across cities lit by fireworks and small towns where people gather around living room TVs, we count down those final seconds to midnight. The confetti drops, glasses clink, and a brand new calendar page begins with the same familiar date, January 1st. But have you ever paused in that moment and wondered why? Why does the new year begin here, deep in winter for half the planet, when the trees are bare and the days are short? Why not start the year in spring, when life returns, fields bloom, and the world feels like it's beginning again? For most of human history, January 1st wasn't the start of anything. The date we celebrate today is the result of political reforms, religious debates, astronomical mistakes, and leaders who tried, sometimes desperately, to make the calendar behave. This story includes a two-faced god, a calendar that drifted wildly out of sync with the seasons, a year so long people called it endless, and a pope who literally erased days from existence. Today we're asking, why does the new year begin on January 1st? To answer that question, we have to rewind the clock thousands of years and step into the early days of ancient Rome. The first Roman calendar wasn't anything like the one we use today. In fact, it only had 10 months. The year began in March, or Martius, named for Mars, the god of war. For the Romans, March marked the return of activity after winter. The warm weather allowed farmers to return to the fields and soldiers to march into battles and campaigns. Life restarted in spring, so the year did too. The final month was December, which literally meant the 10th month. And what about January and February? They didn't exist yet. The cold winter period that followed December simply wasn't counted at all. Roughly 60 days of nameless time sat outside the calendar, ignored because nothing important, in their eyes, happened then. If you couldn't plant or fight, the Romans figured it didn't really matter. That system worked, until it didn't. As Roman society grew more organized and more political, ignoring part of the year became impractical. Around the 7th century BC, Rome's second king, Numa Pompilius, decided it was time to fix things. He added 2 new months, January and February. But at first, these months were placed at the end of the calendar. January wasn't originally the starting point. It was more like a late addition to wrap up the year. Yet January carried something powerful that would eventually shift everything. It was named after Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, thresholds, and transitions. Janus was unlike the other gods. He didn't rule storms or oceans or war. Instead, he symbolized passage, the crossing from one state to another. He was depicted with 2 faces, one gazing backward toward the past, the other looking forward toward what was yet to come. This symbolism resonated deeply with Roman society. Ceremonies involving new ventures, political appointments, and public commitments were tied to Janus. Over time, January slowly drifted toward the front of the calendar, not because of astronomy, but because of meaning. It represented change. It represented opening a door into the future. But even as January moved into that symbolic first position, the Roman calendar itself remained wildly inaccurate. It still relied on lunar cycles, and politicians could manipulate the addition of extra days for political advantage. The year didn't line up with the seasons. Winter festivals were sliding toward autumn. Harvest celebrations were happening when crops were still growing. Rome needed a reset, and that reset came from Julius Caesar. When Caesar rose to power in the 1st century BC, the calendar had become a political and agricultural nightmare. Months no longer matched their original seasonal purpose. Priests, who had the power to extend or shorten the year, sometimes did so to benefit political allies. The result was confusion, mistrust, and constant misalignment with the natural world. Caesar was determined to fix it. He consulted astronomers, including scholars, influenced by Egyptian solar calculations, and created a new system based on the length of the solar year, roughly 365 1/4 days. This became the Julian calendar. But switching to it wasn't as simple as flipping to a fresh calendar page. The existing one had drifted so far off track that Caesar had to stretch the year 46 BC to a staggering 445 days to realign the months with the seasons. Imagine living through a year that seemed to never end. Festival dates moved, seasonal rhythms paused, people marked time in confusion. Historians later called it the Year of Confusion, and the name fits perfectly. Once the reform was complete, Caesar locked in a major administrative decision. The civil year would begin on January 1st. This aligned government transitions, tax cycles, and political terms with a stable and predictable date. The symbolism of Janus, standing between past and future, made January 1st both practical and philosophical. Rome entered a world where time was ordered, predictable, standardized. You might expect that moment to settle the issue forever. But history rarely moves in straight lines. After the Roman Empire declined and Christianity rose across Europe, January 1st began to look suspicious. It was associated with Roman pagan traditions and festivals dedicated to Janus. Early Christian leaders sought to reshape time itself, placing religious holidays, not older pagan ones, at the center of the year. Many regions abandoned January 1st as New Year's Day altogether. In medieval Europe, there was no single date for the new year. It depended on where you lived and which religious feast your region valued most. In some places, the year began on December 25th, Christmas, the celebration of Christ's birth. In others, it started on March 25th, the Feast of the Annunciation, marking the moment Christians believe Mary was told she would give birth to Jesus. This day was also known as Lady Day, and in England it had legal and financial significance. Contracts were timed to it. Taxes were scheduled around it. The year, literally, turned over in spring. In yet other regions, the new year began around Easter, which meant it shifted each year depending on the lunar cycle. Crossing a border could mean stepping into a different year entirely. Two neighboring towns might disagree on what year it was, simply because their calendars rolled over on different days. But there was still another problem brewing, and this one came from math, not religion. The Julian calendar wasn't perfectly accurate. It assumed the year was exactly 365.25 days long, but the true solar year is slightly shorter, by about 11 minutes. That doesn't sound like much, but across centuries those minutes stack up. By the 1500s, the calendar had drifted by roughly 10 days. Spring festivals were happening earlier each year. The date of Easter, which depended on the spring equinox, was slipping out of alignment with the seasons. Something had to be done. In 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduced a new correction, the Gregorian calendar. This reform shortened the year slightly by adjusting the leap year rules and, most dramatically, deleted 10 entire days from the calendar to realign it with the sun. People went to bed on October 4th and woke up on October 15th. For some, it felt like time had literally vanished. Along with the astronomical correction, the reform brought back a standardized new year, January 1st. Catholic countries adopted the change immediately, restoring January as the official start of the year. But not everyone agreed. Protestant nations were skeptical of anything issued by the Pope. They refused to adopt the new system for decades, even centuries. Great Britain and its colonies, including what would become the United States, held out the longest. They continued to celebrate the new year on March 25th, long after much of Europe had already embraced January 1st again. That meant that for part of the 17th and early 18th centuries, British documents and colonial American records show two different dating systems overlapping. A date written in February might belong to one year in one country and a different year in another. Eventually, the pressure of trade, diplomacy, and global coordination became too great to ignore. In 1752, Britain finally adopted the Gregorian calendar. Just like in Catholic Europe, a block of days vanished from the calendar, and January 1st officially became New Year's Day. From that point forward, the world slowly converged toward a shared start date. It wasn't universal overnight. Some cultures and religious calendars still follow different systems today, like the Lunar New Year or Rosh Hashanah. But January 1st became the dominant civil starting point for governments, finance, and international life. So when the clock strikes midnight and a new year officially begins, you're not just stepping into another page on a calendar. You're standing inside a doorway that was shaped by ancient Roman politics, philosophical symbolism, astronomical corrections, and centuries of disagreement about what time itself should look like. January 1st carries the legacy of Janus, a reminder that every ending is also a beginning. It echoes Julius Caesar's attempt to bring order to chaos, the medieval reshaping of time around faith, and a pope who erased days to make the sky and the calendar line up again. The moment we celebrate feels simple, but behind it lies a story of power, belief, mathematics, and identity. A story that survived empires, reforms, and revolutions. And maybe that's what makes New Year's so meaningful. It isn't just the start of a date. It's a moment humanity chose, argued over, corrected, and eventually agreed upon, a shared threshold we step through together. If you enjoyed this journey through time and the surprising origins of everyday things, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more stories hidden beneath the ordinary. Thanks for watching. And wherever you are in the world, Happy New Year.